Welcome to the IIFX fan-centric podcast series. Today, we have a very special guest from two guests from Visiontron. I'd like to introduce Anthony Torsiello. He's the vice president of the company, and Nick Byrne, director of sales. Welcome both. And Anthony, tell us a little bit about Visiontron.
So thanks, Lou, for having us today. I'm Anthony from Visiontron. We're in the people guidance industry, or otherwise known as crowd control. Started in the signage industry about 60 years ago and went full-blown into the crowd control industry. Everything from retractable belts to posts with velvet ropes to heavy-duty standard signage that withstands the really heavy traffic areas like stadiums and airports.
Yeah. Nick, a little bit about Nick.
Yeah, hi Lou.
Hey, Nick.
I've been with Visiontron a little bit less than a year, but I've come from a background with crowd control customer guidance. You can probably tell from my voice I'm not necessarily a local from New York. And I particularly specialize on stadiums. So I bring that extra level of expertise into this conversation, and hopefully we can bring a bit of education during this session.
Yeah. So Anthony, is Nick getting used to New York? How's that working out?
Oh yeah, he's been here for a while, so used to the New York cold, which we got a little bit of snow today, so that's always great.
Well, this is such an important topic today for what we do with the Institute. As you know, we spend a lot of time working with the industry on creating best practices for the journey. And that journey really starts, from the time they buy a ticket to the time they really get home. And it's all about movement. And that's what I'm so excited about, when we say people guidance pros, and the walk through the whole scenario of that journey is so critical. So you really are the basis of the fan journey. And so, Nick, I really want to start with you. Why is effective queuing so important in the fan experience of stadiums and arenas today?
Well, simply put, Lou, a poorly managed queue can lead to a lot of frustrations, delays, and even safety concerns. And well-structured queues improve efficiency, reducing perceived wait times, create that smoother overall experience for the fans. The right queuing strategy ensures that crowds will move fluidly while maintaining security and accessibility. And then, there's some additional best practices that come into play as well, because it's not just necessarily about managing the process at point of entry. There's other areas that have got to be factored in and considered. Even things like weather can make a difference. How well the local train station is managed and ran, the road situation approaching the area. All of these areas the venue can have an influence over and participate in. We recently had a situation where the stadium was located more in a town centre, and we worked with the local planning department to remove planters from the sidewalk, and that facilitated the queue line as well as people trying to pass by, because it was getting confused and disruptive. So, working with transit authorities and local town governance on game day services and event services is important, so that when that guest arrives and they're at the stadium, they already feel that things are being managed and controlled. It sets the right tone, and queue tone is very important, and it really contributes towards the overall enjoyment of the event.
Nick, sometimes you can't see what you can't see. So I'm running a venue for, let's say, 10 years. I don't see it. So that's the importance of bringing you in to see things that we can't see. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. And, and of course, times change, and the venue events roster changes and things. So what may have worked previously in the past might not necessarily work. And even if a stadium gets expanded, then that's going to change. And so there are things that over time can alter the pattern of how things, or even the roads outside got changed by the town and it affects it. So you've got to continually keep taking a look and reevaluating.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Nick. Anthony, in your experiences, what are the biggest mistakes we make in stadiums when designing queues? Well, where are we screwing up?
Okay. One common mistake is waiting for underestimating the demand at peak times. So what might work now when you are fully crowded will not work. You'll have bottlenecks there. Another is failing to provide clear guidance, visual guidance and wayfinding. That causes confusion and inefficiencies. If people are going in different directions where you wanted them to go, then you're going to be putting them in a endless maze to get back to where they need to. Well-designed queue should be adaptable. Clear signage and designated lanes to guide people where they need to go. Other significant factor is the actual event. It's very different whether you're going at a stadium where they have the same people coming in week after week for like sporting events versus concert halls, which have a completely different crowd every single time. Whether you have your people are coming in, day out, or weekly and know the stadium versus a new event where people have never been there before. Public guidance and wayfinding signs are critical to make sure that people go where they need to, because that's the first step. Critical is making sure that people get to the event where they need to.
So we're saying here, wayfinding becomes the critical piece.
Correct.
There's no doubt about it. You know, Nick, a big factor today is fan behavior. How can queues design influence the fan behavior, and particularly today?
Yeah, good question. So, queuing isn't just about managing crowds. It's about influencing movement and patterns. And, there's obviously various options. There's single line queuing, and for multiple service points, that can often seem fairer. It's a more fair and equitable way for people to line up. But that can create a little bottleneck situation. There's the psychological factor around queuing too, about how quickly and how the perceived progress that you might be making in a queue line. We all know this sort of Disney thing where there's entertainment options and distractions going on, and that can affect the perception of how long the wait time is. But there's actually real world consequences to not managing the queue that either detracts or enhances fan behavior. So here's a good example: making people wait at concessions. If that becomes too long, then it has a negative effect on their influence. They might not come back. And just there's some simple things that you can do to help yourself. So if you're in a concession, letting them have access to the menu choices before they get to the counter, so they come prepared, and it's not the what would you like, and then and they're deciding what that is. That's all dead dwell time and waiting time, and that reduces the efficiency of the queue line. So if you could imagine getting someone to make their decision before they get to the counter, and you multiply that by the tens of thousands of concession transactions over the period of an event, you're really improving that flow. And then they're more likely to come back and go, yeah, the line moves, you're okay. Versus missing the start of the game because you're trying to get your beverage or your food.
Yeah. No, very well said, Nick. It does influence the movement, and the more efficient we can be, as you're saying, the better off we all are, whether it's making that retail sale or that concession sale. So, well, and then I guess the real key question comes down to Anthony is what are the best practices today for us to reduce the wait times at entry gates and concessions? That's the key here.
Yep, great question. Efficient entry begins with proper lane allocation. Do you have it all for the general public? Do you have special VIP lanes? Do you have ADA accessible lines and different entrances for that? Clearly guiding those people to those right areas is really key. At concessions, whether you have this single line queue or if you offer mobile ordering, clearly marking those lanes will efficiently get people to where they need to be.
Yeah, there's another factor that comes into the entry gate in particular, of course, now, because typically there's obviously a two-factor. One is security, and then the other is ticket. So Now you've got to go through a double process, and there needs to be consideration for both of those factors so that they're both managed and they're both controlled and both catered for, and not just one or the other.
No, very well said. It's become an issue right now. It's probably one of our key issues in the industry is that bogging, that group, how do I say it? It becomes a bottleneck right up front, and we can reduce that. Very well said. Anthony, we talked about it earlier in the conversation, but I'm kind of agreeing with you. The role of signage is key to effective, system. Can you give us some advice to think about when it comes to signage?
Sure. Keep it simple. Best thing is well-placed, clear signage. If the signs can't be viewable from a distance, then there's no point of the signage. Some people in their queues, there becomes especially bottleneck areas where a lot of people come in at the same time, you can't see where the signs are. So it typically needs tall signs that will guide people to where the general area is. It's also keeping it simple. A lot of times you might want to brand your signs with your colors, and yellow text on a blue background isn't going to be visible anywhere. So keeping it with the basic black and white, black text on white background, that is the clearest way to tell people where they need to go before they even get there. Some of the items too, like a lot of the stadiums now are offering mobile ordering. Customer may order on their phone, get their orders all ready, they go up to the concession stand. If they're waiting in line with the regular people that didn't place their order, that's a wasted opportunity there. So if a concession has the general order now versus the mobile pickup, those lanes should be clearly labeled.
Yeah, very well said. Let's talk about security for a minute here. The balance between safety and security and the fan experience. How could stadiums balance, Anthony, how can stadiums balance security measures with the smooth fan entry process?
Yep, great question. Security is always a necessary evil. It's part of our lives. It's something that shouldn't feel like you're waiting in line.
Yep.
So like Nick mentioned before, the Disney approach of making it entertaining while you're in line, that makes perceived wait time so much less. Doing a staggered approach. If you have ticket scanning separate from bag checks, separate from the metal detectors, separate from any additional screening, little batches of movement feels a lot quicker than waiting in one line for eternity. Also separating that out so that there is additional movement there just makes it perceived as a lot quicker. Using barriers in there. People like to crowd together. If the lanes are clearly designated and divided out, then that process is a lot of a better flow. Doing multi-line queues versus a single queue snake. The individual lines appear better, but there's a lot of unfairness in there. What line's going to go quicker? What you can't really tell what person's going to have an issue, and the family that has all their 10 kids that are trying to get into one area versus the pro that knows how to go through it right away. The single line queue we found definitely eliminates that issue there.
Yeah, no question, man.
And then basically just also too clearly guiding it. So if you have general admission versus your VIP, people are paying all that premium for a VIP entrance, but can't find it. That's a lost opportunity there.
Yeah, well, very well said. I'm going to move to technology now, Nick. With some of the advancements we're making with digital and mobile technologies, how does that impact the queue management?
Well, it's an interesting change over the past few years that digital technology has had. No longer do we line up at the counter to buy our ticket. We buy our ticket in advance, and it's on our cell phones. So mobile ticketing, digital queuing systems, real-time crowd flow data can help you make smarter decisions. The mobile pre-check-in for ticket holders has had a big effect on event management. But there's still that human factor, and you've got to understand the queue science. So, a good example of that is where if you're in a queue line and you're waiting, and there's a digital sign that says, "Hey, the wait line over here may be less." More often people will say, "Well, I'm in the line and I can't see how long that line is. I'm not going to go and get out of this line and get into that one because I can't see it. I don't know it." And as we all know, sometimes if we're driving on highways, it always seems that the other line is moving quicker, or at the supermarket, but it's not always the case. And so sometimes when you're using digital technology to try and inform someone about another feature, they might not take you up on that offer because that human behavior comes into it, and you have to understand that. And that's part of the science around understanding queuing, but also balancing, physical queuing systems and digital queuing systems.
Yeah, very well said too there. Let me move to large crowds, usually like at halftime, and they're all going for concessions or retail, whatever. What are some of the strategies, Anthony, for managing large crowds during, peak times?
Okay. The best way to handle that is with phased releases. Whether you put certain sections going to one exit and divide the crowd out that way, or you only let out a certain amount of time, people at a certain time, creating waves of releasing so that there's not a bottleneck that just keeps occurring. Clearly guiding which way they should exit. Sounds simple, but a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
Telling people where to go to leave is a good way to going. And sometimes there's the crowd mentality. Some people might be going in the wrong direction and people are just following the crowd. If you give them clear guidance of where to go, that helps out a lot of those instances. There's other strategies of having either post-event events or post-event events at inside the stadiums, meet and greets, different barbecues, different mini concerts or different events there to keep some of the people in there, so you're not trying to unload the entire stadium at the one time. Smaller groups will make flow go a lot better. Same thing with before the event. Instead of having everyone in the at the entrance gate at 15 minutes before the game, if you put events throughout the day, you'll get the people inside of the stadium, so there's less of a crowd there.
Very well. Yep. Anthony, how should venues approach queuing for ADA accessibility?
So ADA is imperative, making sure that people that have either mobility issues or visual issues can clearly know where to go. You don't want to send them down a path that they're not going to be able to get into the stadium. They need to know where to go from the start. Clear signage also makes it, I mentioned before, clear signage is easy to read, but also is imperative for anyone that needs that would need that.
Yeah. Nick, as we get closer to wrapping up this podcast, what, I don't know, either a couple, 5 or 6 takeaways for us in the industry to look at optimizing the queuing system. Now, give us some good takeaways that we can use at home,
Yeah, well, I think, the most obvious thing that we would say is queuing is an art and a science.
Right.
And you have to think about it. It's not just throw some barriers up and you're done, or a sign here and there. There is a lot of thought that goes into it, and making sure that you're optimizing it based on all of the factors, the game day factor, the type of venue, the event, the consumer that's coming in, and all of these things that need to be thought through. And so, thoughtful design, strategic placement, understanding fan behavior, they all contribute and make a big difference. And also, it's not set and forget. You do have to keep tweaking it and moving it and adjusting it. And, help yourself stay ahead of those crowd control challenges and issues is key. But also understand that, we're obviously an equipment provider for these arenas, and so you just have to understand that the stadium environment actually is one of the harshest places for this type of equipment. Indoor, outdoors, lots of fans, and they're moved in and out, they're put away, they're brought back out, they're put away, and so there's a lot of abuse that goes on to the equipment. So making sure that you're getting the right equipment that's fit for purpose, that's up for the job, and can survive the wear and tear of the environment. But I think the biggest takeaway beyond all is it is an art and a science, and thoughtful design, thinking about the queuing and the equipment and where you've got it and how that flows before, inside and outside, and after an event too, is all a critical part.
Very well. Thank you too for that foresight for us to help us. And we want to thank Visiontron for being a leader in the industry in regards to people movement. Nick and Anthony, how can we reach you if we need to reach out as a stadium person to reach you?
Always available on our website, visiontron.com. Nick is always available too. Nick is our stadium guru. So anything with crowd control that you have a question, the industry, everyone has the same issues. Everyone talks, and anytime we talk to one person, there's always, oh yeah, I had that same exact experience. So different fan groups like this, different stadium management groups, you're not alone. Problems that you have, everyone else has. So we've seen it once, we've seen it 100 times. So there's nothing unique out there. There's no crowd control and the equipment like this. It's not rocket science, but it's usually an afterthought. We get it all the time of, I need something, my opening is tomorrow, I need it tomorrow, where it's a core item that's critical for your fan experience, because if they're waiting in lines, they're not going to be happy and not want to come back. So planning it out and looking at a whole holistic approach is the best way to handle that.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, listen, I want to thank Anthony, thank you, and Nick. Thank you very much for a great podcast.
A pleasure. Thank you, Lou.
Thanks for having us.